Fans, if you enjoyed Family Spirits, the adventures and evidence of Gallo family ghost hunters, you're going to love Family Spirits 2, Purpose and the Paranormal by Bobby J. Gallo. Paperback and nookbook available through Barnes & Noble. More adventure, more evidence, more ghosts. Materialize your copy today.
Okay, everyone, and welcome to Creepy Conversations from the Castle. This is Bobby J. Gallo from Gallo Family Ghost Hunters, and we have a great show for you tonight. We are actually coming to you live from Castello Gallo here in Roseto, Pennsylvania, and that's why we call it Creepy Conversations from the Castle, because this house was built in the early 1920s, and it looks like a castle. So it's Creepy Conversations from the castle. It may not look like my thumbnail, but hey, you know what? I like to dream. But anyway, things have been going great. I know that a lot of you have been watching our episodes and our past podcasts, and I just want to let everybody know that the channel is growing leaps and bounds. Right now, we are almost at 41,000 subscribers on YouTube. And we have about 7,000 on Twitter and about 5,500 on Facebook. And tonight, the show is actually being TriCast on all three platforms. So right now, we are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, and we are on Facebook as well. Did I say that right? YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. That's right. Okay. Well, anyway, my head is not where it should be because I'm really excited for our guest here tonight, because I want to tell you a little bit about this guy. You know, the paranormal is a really funny field. Sometimes you meet people and you just click with them. Now, this guy, I don't know what it is, but I've told him this. I only met this guy maybe a year ago, but I feel like I've known him my entire life. It's just sometimes you just connect with people that way. And he's a very fascinating individual because, like I've always told people, I am not psychic, but I do have a gift. And that gift is I can tell whether a psychic is the real deal or not. Like I was telling Danielle Traverna a few episodes back, there are three types of psychics in my mind. There are the genuine ones, the ones that think they're genuine, and the ones that want to be genuine. This guy's the real deal. He's actually a mediumship spirit artist, which is very fascinating. And I'm definitely going to get into that with him. So we're going to bring him on right now. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Moschella.
Everybody, these are my guys.
I love it.
This is
hey,
my friend Bobby. You're on TV.
You are. Wow, that's awesome.
Thank you for having us on tonight, Bobby.
I love it. And tell him he can stay on as long as he wants.
Okay.
That's awesome.
This is my other little guy, Owen.
Hey, oh, look at that. An actor.
I have like an audience here with them. Guys,
I think that's great.
Be quiet.
That's awesome. Rich, you do everything. You do everything because not only you are a mediumship spirit artist And but you are also a published author like myself, except you have a whole lot more books than I do. And we're going to be showing everybody that a little bit later. And
I'm
you're also
obsessive about writing. I'm constantly working on projects, sometimes 2 or 3 at the same time. You know, I'm doing a few pages here, a few pages there, and you know how it goes. In a
I
few
do.
months, you look at it and you're like, wow, this is almost a finished book. And then that's how they kind of get put out. I'm like, well, I'm really almost done with this one, so this one's going to go after, you know, and then they just fall into place.
Right, right, right. And you know, I got to tell you, it's I think it's great because I know, at least in my world, you know, I've written 3 books, 2 on the paranormal, 1 on being a magician because I was a professional magician full time for 15 years. And I find it extremely difficult to write a book. I mean, for me, it is a time consuming, tedious process. When I get done with it, I say, I'm never going to do it again. But now I've done it 3 times. Probably will do it again at some point, even though I have no plans for one. I started working on Family Spirits 3, but I just kind of like fell by the wayside. But tell me a little bit about, you know, I always have to dive into this right off the bat because mediums just fascinate me because I am a believer. There's no question about that. One of the reasons I got back into the paranormal after decades was because of my experience with a psychic medium that I talk about in my second book.
Right.
So I know they're genuine. I asked this to Danielle Traverna. I want to ask it to you as well.
And she's another amazing medium. I mean,
She
I
is
met her
amazing.
at an event that we all worked at, and I had the opportunity of just talking to her. And like you said, you know when you meet a genuine person, and she's one of those people.
Her energy is amazing. Just the energy that she exudes is amazing. But Rich, tell me, when you're doing like a seance, like what are you feeling? Like what are you actually experiencing? Because you know there's auditory mediums, they call it clairaudience. There's people that can see them, people that can feel them.
Right.
What are you experiencing? That's what I want to know.
Well, when you're a medium, I mean, you're using all of your clairs. My strongest one is my clairvoyance, my clear seeing. So for me, when I walk into a space and when I'm holding a seance, I open that antenna up, right? So now I'm allowing all my senses to be open to the spirit world, and they could use that. So first, I start seeing the clear, voyant images. So it's almost like a daydream. That's how I would describe it to somebody. So if you were sitting at your desk and you were thinking of a vacation you took a year ago, and those images of the beach start going through your head and you going out into the sand, well, that's kind of like how a medium starts seeing in their mind's eye that loved one or that person or that spirit that's coming through. They'll start showing me that. They'll
Oh
start
wow.
showing me the images. So when I'm in a space, say like you said, a seance, I'm in this space and all of a sudden I will see the person coming through and they'll start showing me things they did in life. I'll start seeing like a movie reel. And this is the same thing as we're going through psychic and mediumship readings. You'll start seeing things and they'll start showing you their lifespan. They'll start showing you things that were important to them. If there was a military service, you would start seeing these images. And it's just up to you as the medium to be competent enough to start putting these pieces together and lay that information out correctly. You can't do a jumbled reading where things are way all over the place. You just need to
Right.
know what's coming in and present that information correctly to the person in front of you. So,
Gotcha.
and when you're in a seance, it's tenfold, it's 20-fold, because now not only are you opening up to the space and the spirits in the space, everyone who's sitting in that seance has the potential of having a loved one come through and find that connection. So now you're really opening yourself up to a lot of spirits at once.
Mm,
Where being competent and being able to associate, okay, this is for you, and asking spirit to help you.
right.
Sometimes I'll even ask, can you give me a name of the person that's here that you need, or the first letter of the name of the person that's here, so I can attach this information that's coming through to a person in that audience.
Right. Right. And I think all of that is absolutely fascinating. I want to do a quick shout out to Todd and Carmela and Jenny Colucci, who are in the audience right now.
Amazing people.
I know. They're so
Yeah.
supportive. It's amazing. You're
I
right.
work with the best, and Those are three amazing individuals in our field. And you know the paranormal field, Bobby. I mean,
I do.
there's great things happening and there's toxic things happening. And
Toxic is a good word.
it's just finding the energy that flows with you and that high vibration. And
Right.
that's who these people are. You know, they bring such light into what we're doing, and they're in it
Without
for
question. Without question. Without question. You know, Rich, here's the thing. This is where I envy you. I don't just envy the amount of books you have compared to the amount of books I have. Come on. I'm not going to let that go. But here's the thing. Even as a paranormal investigator, you know, I'm pretty much convinced that the afterlife exists. I've talked to enough spirits. I've gotten enough evidence. But when you're a medium and you're actually communicating on that level, to me, that's a level above being an investigator. I mean, to you, there they are. You're actively communicating with them. I mean, it's complete reality to you. And although I did have one psychic experience in my entire life where I heard them, clairaudience. Well, actually, I've had several. One was pretty recent. I envy a person who could almost do it on command, like a medium could do it. Because for me, it's always an accident. For me, it's just they slip through. I mean, just recently when we were doing the Knaus homestead in Emmaus, Pennsylvania, I was outside, well away from the house, and I heard my wife in back of me call my name, and I said, "What, honey?" And I looked around, and nobody was there. She was in the house on the top floor, and that was, I guess they call that a doppelganger spirit. It was a very strange experience. And then one time, when we were having a negative experience, and this was going back like 12 years, I heard a whole bunch of them come into my ear, and that was scary for me. And I think after that experience, I kind of blocked it out. Like, I want to be an investigator. I want to get the evidence, but I don't want that kind of an experience, even though I still envy what you do. Do you ever have a situation that scares you when you're communicating?
There have been a few moments where it's kind of jarring, the responses that you get. And I would probably say when someone's using a digital voice like recorder
Right.
or the DR60, where we're hearing instant responses.
Right.
I'll walk into a place and be like, I don't like the feelings down here. I'm not picking up any good vibes. And all of a sudden we'll start doing a digital voice session and we'll start getting, you know, like either hollering, or it would almost sound like growls, or just like
Oh, wow. Yeah.
something over the digital tape recorder, really throwing out energy, right? That's making a loud sound that, you know, it's not welcoming.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of when you feel a little, you know, like, okay, let's get out of this space. I've never been in a situation though where I felt, you know, like I'm never going back there again. I just kind of think about when we're getting those kinds of responses and what spirit is going through to give us that response. Maybe they're using a lot of energy at once and it's coming through as what we would perceive as a growl or something, as them yelling, but they're just trying to make a sound. That's how their energy is coming across. The same thing when we're in places sometimes and we ask, who are we communicating with? And we hear, I'm the devil. Instantly, you could throw a narrative down and be like, oh, we're communicating with like Satan himself. We're communicating with the devil. But you also have to think, if spirit doesn't want you there, what is one thing that they can say that could get maybe most of anybody out of there? Is if they say, I'm a demon, I'm a devil.
Right. Right.
What is your gut telling you? And I always say this when we're in a place and we're investigating and somebody's getting it. Do you really, like, do you feel something dark here? Do you feel like you're not wanted here? Because you don't have to be a medium. I honestly feel that we all have this ability, this psychic ability, this mediumship ability. It's a God-given gift to everybody on earth. We're all souls. We all came from the same source, right? But it's learning how that muscle works. Right. And it's like we go to the gym to train our bodies and to grow our muscles. The same thing with mediumship and being a psychic. You got to learn how that aspect of yourself works. So that's through meditation, through energy work. And when you start aligning stuff like that, you start opening up. You'll start hearing that clairaudience. You'll start smelling. Your clairgustance, your clairsentience. You'll start smelling. You'll start tasting. Like, all of a sudden you'll be in your kitchen and be like, I taste my grandmother's Christmas cookies, and it's June. That should not be coming through. Or you'll be in a place and you'll be like, I smell lilacs, and it's Christmas time.
Right.
So you'll see things start slipping in as you start opening up, as you start learning how mediumship works and how consciousness works, because that's who I feel. That's how we're communicating. I 100% feel is we're communicating with consciousness.
Yes.
When we raise our vibration up, spirit energy lowers theirs, and that connection's made. It's an ultimate, radio tower for talking to those on the other side of the veil and for them to talk to us. So when we're in these places, that bridge is met. You have to meet them halfway, and they meet you the other halfway. And being competent, being open to it, knowing that it's coming to you and not from you is huge for any medium. So when we go into these places, I'll always ask somebody, whether it's Jenny, my friend Jenny, that's always with me, how do you feel in this basement? What imagery, what imagery are you getting? I always love to give somebody a piece of paper, and they'll be like, I don't know how to draw. I go, it doesn't matter. Write or draw what you're seeing in your mind's eye, and you'll be surprised on what you're getting. And you'll know when you go into places that aren't good, or when you go into a place where you don't feel threatened. So your gut is the best tool that you have.
I totally agree with that. And by the way, you're such a pro. I saw you lecture in Boot, New Jersey at the Elks Lodge last year. I loved it. Your segment was phenomenal. It really was. You had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. So if anybody in the audience gets a chance to ever see Richard lecture, do it. Do it. Absolutely. Because he's amazing. But, getting back to what you were saying about your gut, one of our earliest investigations was at a little known hotspot called Old Unity Cemetery in Fort Mill, South Carolina. And to this day, I said it in my first book, and it's not changed. It's one of the most haunted patches of land we've ever investigated. But there was a negative spirit there, and we all felt it. None of us had, psychic gifts. I think my wife did, actually, but and still does. But me and the kids, not so much. And we felt it. That thing wanted us out and manipulated our equipment to tell us to get out. And we actually have that video on our channel. So, in season 1, Spirit Desire Solitude, I think it's called. But it's because it was a colonial cemetery, colonial burial ground, if you will. But I know what you're saying about that feeling, that innate sense, whether it's, and we've had, and conversely, we've had really positive experiences. I'll never forget when we were in Elmwood Cemetery in Charlotte, where we ran across the spirit of a Southern socialite who wanted flowers on her grave. And and if anybody says, how can you possibly know that? You got to watch the show.
Yeah.
Exactly how we knew that. But I totally get where you're going.
And they want to be just that acknowledgement that you gave her by putting flowers there.
Yes.
You're bringing her from just a name that's on a stone to
right.
being a person. You're telling her story. And that's a lot too when we go into these haunted locations. Sometimes when you go in and you tell their story or you bring that message forward, the activity starts to decrease instead of increase because they just want to be acknowledged.
Right.
It's kind of like a person in a room that just wants to be heard. So what does that person do? Start raising their voice. And if you don't hear them, they'll start trying to knock things over. Do you see me? So when you start thinking like this spirit maybe doesn't want me here, they're throwing things across, maybe they just want to be acknowledged. So that's another aspect that we need to think of as investigators and as researchers when we go into these places. There was one story with a medium that I trained with. This family was really upset. They lost their first son, and their younger son was saying the cabinets in the kitchen are flying off, and they had a team come in and they start researching and they weren't that professional because right off the bat they said this is like a demonic case. And my friend, who's this pretty well-known medium, comes into the home and starts saying that your older son is coming through, and he wants to point out that there's drugs in that cabinet
Mm.
on the top shelf.
Oh,
And
wow.
doesn't want his brother to get them. So the family looks on the top shelf, back right corner, finds a bag of drugs,
Mm.
and the activity stops. So you have to understand, sometimes we don't know what's happening, and they're just trying to come forward to grab our attention or do something to catch our attention. And we might think it's, them trying to cause, some like chaos in the home, but they're just trying to be seen. They're trying to be heard.
Right. Well, clearly you being a medium, you don't need a lot of the equipment that, like, say, I would use. Like,
Or when you investigate with Anthony Simonelli, he brings an entire store with him. So yeah. So when like he's on an investigation, I'm like, I could bring a book bag because he
right.
has everything and anything, and he wheels it in, and he's great with the equipment. And the band offs, another great team that I get to work with, and Lisa, Nicole from Full Moon. I mean, just amazing individuals, and they bring equipment. So we really have a well-oiled machine when we go in. Like when we go into these places, everybody has a little niche that they fill. I do the mediumship spirit art, who
Okay.
equipment, who is great with the EVPs. Ron and Lourdes with the digital seance. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's amazing.
we all fill a piece of that, and that's why it's kind of like a band. The band comes on stage, everybody has a role to play, and
Right.
when it's done right, the music sounds great, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so yeah, I was going to ask that question. I mean, like, do you ever use any equipment other than your God-given gifts?
I used like the REM pods. I got the motion sensor rope that I put out, because I like to see when I'm setting up. And
Mhm.
it's set up in a seance style. I'll do the rope around the perimeter. I'll do a
Right.
REM pod with a trigger object, maybe a few if the space is big enough. And as spirit comes through, I like to give people that visual. If they don't have that ability to see or to hear or to smell, you have the visual when spirit enters and where they enter from. And it's always cool too to see when we're doing a seance if the rope lights up by someone in the audience, and we could shift our attention to the person that the rope is lighting up by.
Right. Right.
Kind of helps me move quickly to attach what's coming through to that person. And they get more of a reading instead of me trying to figure out, okay, this piece of information, that lit up. Can you accept a Gina who's showing me like she, got her hair done and all like done, but she's showing me playing cards and she's showing me a connection to Atlantic City. So, it makes me move a little quicker once we see something light up by somebody, and they're fun. I mean, when you have a REM pod on the floor, and for the guests in attendance, and you ask, "Are you able to step into the center of this room and touch the cigar that's next to the REM?" and you see the light go off. I mean, okay, are you able to back off? When you ask these intelligent questions and you get those kinds of responses,
Absolutely.
send those people home being like, well, how did that happen? Because that sat quiet for a long time before he asked spirit to come close and touch it.
Right. Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of equipment that, like, we use a spirit touch a lot, which is no longer made. And the only way it can go off is with an exchange of human electrons. You have to physically touch it.
Right.
So if the light goes off, something touched it. And it's just the way it goes. And I actually had one of those fried by a spirit.
Wow.
And all of a sudden the things malfunctioned and wouldn't turn back on again. When we went to examine the video, you can see an energy orb enter the unit just as it fried.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. But Fabian from Triton Paranormal saw that, me discuss that. His team actually had one and he sent it to me to replace the one that got fried, which is one of the nicest things anybody's ever done. But over the years, we've had that experience that people send us stuff a
Yeah.
lot, and we use it. We always give them credit when they do it too, because that's really nice for people to do.
Yeah.
That's great. Let me see. I had a thought and I just completely lost it because, like I told you before the show, this is completely unscripted and I don't even know what we're talking about.
Well, as you see, I had my kids here. My wife had to take our youngest to an urgent care.
Oh,
Has a
mhm.
fever. So I told my two older guys, listen, Daddy's gonna be on a show for an hour. I set them up with popcorn, drinks, and they still had to come out to wave to
Oh, that's fine. I think it's great. Come on. I think it's wonderful. So that's awesome. So I just hope your young one is okay. That's all that matters. Um,
with like three boys, when one thing goes through the house, it just is an ongoing cycle of sickness.
right. Tell Now you have a lot of books, and what I'm going to do is to show everybody how many books you have. I'm going to flash a slide on the screen
Okay.
right now. These are Richard Moschella's books, and I got this off of Amazon, and I got clearance from Rich before the show to make sure I could show this.
It's all good. Those are them.
There is a little delay right now with Restream. Sorry, folks, that wasn't me. I'm clicking away. This slide's not going anywhere. Now, Richard,
Yeah.
that's a nice collection, and your covers are great. I love your covers.
The great people do an amazing job with the
Mm,
product. I mean, they really. I tell them since I'm a visual person, I always sketch my cover out, and the editor throws it back at me, and they're like, "What kind of cover are you thinking of?" And I always send my sketch. He's like, "Perfect." And within like an hour or two, they send me back the rendered photo. And it's usually the first one that they send over. It's like, that's it. Because I kind of see the cover of the book already, and it happens with you too. I'm sure as you're writing and you start seeing like the narrative that's coming out of it, what are you telling? You kind of start visualizing what is that cover going to look like? Is it going to be an investigative cover, or is it going to have some symbolism to it? So
right.
as a creative, I think the covers come naturally. It's almost like the other part of the book. It's the thing that's going to get that book in those people's pockets because the cover has to grab them. And
No question. No
they
question.
do a fantastic job at that. And I'm very happy with them. And I always tell my friends, if you're looking for a publisher, they are a great publisher to start out with.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I know. I got to tell you, I have one regret. When you had me sign my book at the Boot and Elks Lodge last year, I did it with a Sharpie, and you can't even make out the inscription because my handwriting is horrible as it is. And here I am inscribing it with a Sharpie, and I'm like, man, maybe I should give him another book with an inscription you can actually read.
I love it. I have it right on my shelf, right next to my Ron Iacovetti books. It's right there. I love reading my friends' books. I mean, it's something I love to support my friends. I love to support the community, and that's I'm always one of the first people. You tell me you got a book coming out, I want to read it because I want to see what you're writing about. I've always been curious. I want to know about your experiences. What made you come into this field?
Right.
Because we learn. I mean, still where we are still learning, and that's the one thing too with this field. I think some people say, "Well, I know everything." Well, that's the wrong attitude to have. We have to be open. We have to be open to learning and to continuously learn and learn about everything we possibly can, because it all does come back to this. Whether you're learning about historical stuff, read like books on history, read books on local history. You'll be surprised on that history that you're reading about, how when you go into these places, all of a sudden you'll start hearing a name: American Revolution, Morristown,
Mm-hmm.
1778, the hardest winter in the war. It was, and all of a sudden that just starts coming to you, and it's like, okay, perfect. So now this is going to help me with that, and
Right.
even people's stories on how they developed, how they advanced, and where just you came from. Nobody's journey is easy, and if we have somebody to learn from, or if they offer like advice on what they did that worked for them, I think we should read everything we can. So
I could not agree more. I could not agree more. And yeah, I know you were referring to Jockey Hollow.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that was worse than Valley Forge.
The men were eating their own shoe leather.
Yes, yes, and I think it was one of the only times Washington actually had an execution. He was very much against that,
Yeah.
but he felt he had to do it to set an example.
The mutiny. I mean,
It
you
was a
have
mutiny.
entire like brigades starting to be like, we're out of here. We're like losing this. We're freezing to death. The people in the town of Morristown were hiding their dogs and their horses because the soldiers were getting to a point where they were going to start eating animals. I mean, it was
Yeah,
getting to a point in the war that you really don't want to talk about, but it wasn't good. And a lot of that energy, when you walk through or you hike that area, you feel it by like the Tempe Wick House.
yep.
If you walk around there, you walk out to those fields where those soldiers held their drills. I mean, you feel that energy. It's almost like a despair that when you're walking on these trails that you can feel.
I could not agree more. And we have a fairly recent episode that we did in Jockey Hollow, and the thing that I thought was fascinating, and it's not happened since, is through our spirit box we were getting men with English accents,
Mhm.
UK accents, and that's never happened before, and it's never happened since. And when I did some research, I was told that a lot of colonial settlers still had their English accents,
Yeah,
and even that some of the soldiers did as well.
because you got to think. I mean, what was it? 20 years they came off the boat.
That's it.
So I mean, you don't lose an accent.
Right,
So
right. I know all my relatives still talk like this. You know what I'm saying, Rich? Hey, come on. You know,
they want to say, "Hey, you want a cannoli there, Fred?"
exactly. That's where we go. But that, and there's another thing. I did an investigation in an old abandoned church that was built by my great uncle. And I'm getting this Italian coming through the spirit box. Heavy Italian. Now he died before I was born, but to this day I'm like, could that have been him? I don't know, but it's amazing sometimes how that happens. I know Ron talks about that. Ron Iacovetti, synchronicity, I think he calls it. Um, and I agree with that. I agree with that for sure. For sure.
Everywhere you'll see, all of a sudden you're at a certain point, and there's a person that you bump into, and it's like you've known each other forever, and just kind of like how we talked about that. Things happen, things get put on your
Right.
path, and they're put on your path for a reason.
Right.
Sometimes the time that it's happening, we don't think so. We think, oh my God, this is happening to me, and why? But things are put in place for you to arrive where you are today.
Right.
Whether it's the bad stuff, the good stuff, everything has made you who you are today. Sitting at this table, we're having this talk. Everything brought you to this point, and I feel that's spirit. I think spirit has a large part to do with where we're going, what we're doing. Whether it's subtle nudges, whether they're strong nudges. I honestly feel that, and and they help us along our path.
Yeah, I could not agree more. On the subject of synchronicity, I got to ask you a question. Are you an orb guy or not an orb guy?
Orbs,
Yes.
I would like to be there when it happens.
Got it.
I've seen a lot of people come up to me and they're like, "Can you look at this?" And they show me just hard for me to look at your cell phone and say that is spirit activity. I would like if they show me that video and I see it do this, and then I see it do this, and then I see it do this. I have a more likely of a chance to be like, I think you do, like you did capture something. It doesn't
Mhm.
look like a fly. I mean, I've seen bugs on camera,
Yeah.
but when something just starts doing some maneuvers and you start seeing it, and it's not just being like blown away with airflow or
Right, right.
duck, um, sometimes the shape changes. Sometimes you see something pulsating and it's white. And then all of a sudden you'll see it get like a squiggly, or it does like a number 8, and just so
Okay.
I would be safe enough to say I am on the fence with it. I'm
That's okay.
always going to go with caution when I'm looking at orb videos, but I want to see the orb do something that, if it's a bug, it can't do, or if it just blows off the camera, dust. But if it's showing me moves that dust can't do, a bug can't do, I would lean more towards it being spirit activity. So I would say that I am on the fence with orbs. My short answer.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And even if you said that you reject them entirely, that would be fine too. Um,
I don't think I don't think we could reject anything. I think we always have to be open to the possibility. I think when we come into something and we're closed-minded that this is not paranormal activity, this is not a UFO, we need to be inquisitive. We need to look at the footage. We need to examine it. We need to give it at least that much respect before we rule it out.
Well, I mean, there's certain orbs that I can reject entirely. Like I know lens flare when I see it.
Yep, but you will look at the video. There's some people that just shove no, I don't want to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm saying to still be open to looking at that evidence. Give that person who thinks that they captured something that much respect to be like, I will look at your video. Right. I will give you an honest opinion of what I think is happening, and you can take it or you can leave it. I will give you that much respect.
I always say blind acceptance isn't good, but blind skepticism doesn't help anybody either.
No.
And as well as I do, there's all kinds of people in this field. There's all kinds of people in the paranormal. You have your true believers, but there are people in this, I don't want to call it an industry, this field. There are people in this field that their sole purpose of existence is to debunk everything. And I think that's how that's how they get their self-worth, is by saying, I can figure it all out.
Yeah.
When sometimes the evidence is so overwhelming that why don't we just call it that let's just call out the elephant in the room and say it's a paranormal occurrence. I mean, I've debunked things in my own books. Years later I look at it and I say, you know what? Yeah, no, this probably wasn't, but it's already in print. So what am I going to do at that point?
Yeah.
But at the time I believed it, and later on I kind of debunked myself. But there are those times and there are those experiences that to this day I cannot debunk, and I have to chalk up to a genuine paranormal occurrence.
Yeah.
All your books. I'm gonna put that slide up again because I want to look at the titles here.
Okay.
Okay. The one that really captures my attention is Spirits and History. Can you tell me a little bit about that book?
That book was a project that came out of my team at the time when we were investigating all these different places throughout Morristown, throughout Chester, New Jersey. Anybody knows like Morris County. This was one of the big hubs of the American Revolution. The iron mines were producing the Iron Forge. It even goes into the Civil War. But that book itself was just so fun to write because we were going to these places where historical events happened, where these figures, occupied that space, whether it was Hamilton, Washington, and we were able to investigate them. So that Spirits in History was actually combining the historical with the paranormal and having them come together as we were examining that evidence and telling that story. So a lot of those stories in that book, you are just written accounts of those investigations, much like the work that you've done in your books, where you walk through each step of that investigation. What happened? This is how this was recorded, and we talk about the history. And I feel like that's important because in the paranormal work of what we do, I feel that the historical with the paranormal is a great teaching tool for kids when they go into these places. If they're not a fan of history from school, well, once you start being able to feel, see, and what we believe we are communicating with, it's going to make you go home and want to research more. And I've seen that. I've seen, when we do these Morris County Park events here in Jersey, we get reoccurring people that just keep coming back. And there's there's young kids, there's 14-year-olds, there's 15-year-olds, and they talk about like, well, I read this book on Washington, and I found out that Lafayette was another person, and we got that name on, you know, the spirit box. And so that's awesome. So when we could combine something to teach the youth with paranormal, which is cool in their opinion, you know,
Yeah.
ghosts, you know, it's a
Sure.
teaching. So another thing that this could be doing, and this is my public service announcement to any historical place that's having an issue with raising money, raising funds. If you don't believe in the paranormal, that's fine. If you're a skeptic, that's fine. But what paranormal events can do for your building, for your park, is to raise funds to refurbish things, to keep your building open. You know, it's better than bake sales. You know, when you could bring paranormal events that are done respectively by good groups, you know, you can raise those funds to keep that place going, to keep your lights on, to keep your heat on, and to continue to teach kids about these places. But maybe try using paranormal as a way of getting them in the door, because you'll be surprised, you know, how many people will keep coming back
Right.
because they understand how it works. And that's one thing that we do in all of our things. I know you explain how the tools work. You explain how mediumship works. So this is how we're gathering this information. And if you want to, you could go out, you could go to the stores that we buy the equipment from, and you can do this too. You know, and the community that I know, and all of you guys, you know, whether it's the people in my group that I investigate with you, you're always open. You know, if anybody has a question, shoot Bobby a message. I know without a doubt he's going to respond to you. This is the tool I use. This is the setting that I like to put it on. If you message me, I'll give you information about mediumship classes. You know, like, it's a community that cares to uplift one another, and
Most of the time.
yeah, most of the time. And that's why you just keep working with the good people.
Right.
So and that's a huge thing of what we're doing. But I think, and you know, again, I didn't want to go off on this huge tangent, but
No,
but
you're the guest.
with the spirits and history, that book to me was awesome because I got to experience two of the loves. I love reading like all historical.
Right.
I love the American Revolution, the Civil War, and living in Morris County, I'm right in the hub of where so much took place that I'm like, this has to be a book. You know, and I'm always jotting things down. My wife's like, oh, here he goes again. We're on a trip, and I got the notebook out, and I got a pen, and I'm sitting on the beach, and things are just coming to me. And some of it's are notes, but that's how kind of that book happened. I would jot notes here and there, and what would come back as an investigation was happening, and we started looking through the evidence and just putting it out there to be an ultimate teaching tool on combining the historical with the paranormal.
You know, it's you know, you're talking, and I'm thinking back to a recent episode that we did called Moravian Mystery. Now, I live out here in Pennsylvania, near Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which was founded by the Moravians, which was a German sect of Christianity founded by Count Ludwig von Zinzendorf. How'd you like that? Grow up with that name.
Yeah.
And he was actually a German aristocrat who was fleeing. It was a Protestant sect that was fleeing another Protestant sect. And they founded Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It was actually visited by John Adams, our second president. And he was actually amazed because it was a complete self-contained community. And they had technology of the day that surpassed anybody else. But we did an investigation of the ruins in Bethlehem, and we had a surprising amount of activity that we were not even expecting. And but yeah, I mean, and then the Canals Homestead investigation that we did, which was also founded by Moravians. The whole fundraising idea is a really good idea, and I know the board of directors there would probably really go for that because they loved having us there, but we weren't even charging anybody.
Right.
So that's actually a really good idea because I would like to go back there and do another investigation. You would be amazed. People seeing soldiers with bloody bandages around their head, like seeing them literally walk into the house. I interviewed some people who literally saw this with their own eyes. And
that's awesome.
Isn't that crazy? Like full body apparitions. And
In Milford, Pennsylvania. I don't know if have you ever investigated the Columns
I have
Museum?
I've been to Milford several times. I've not investigated there.
Bobby, you got to go to the Columns Museum. Everybody out there, you got to go to the Columns Museum. The Full Moon Paranormal team said, Rich, it was my birthday too. It was a cold January 27th night. We all head to the Columns, and they have a flag when Lincoln was assassinated.
Oh,
His
wow.
stained on the flag. Immediately, I'm a Civil War buff, so I'm in that room and I'm just feeling, so much. That room has everything: bullets from the Civil War, shoes. I mean, things that were used in everyday life in the Civil War.
Wow.
There's the Lincoln flag. So the bandoffs come in, the DR-60 comes out, and if anybody, research what that is, and you'll be blown away by the results that you get from it. So Robert turns it on, and I said, Mr. President, are you able to finish this? 4 score, and I wait for an intelligent response. He plays it back, and we hear, in 7 years ago.
No way.
I walked out that night saying, I communicated with Abraham Lincoln on my birthday.
That is incredible. That's incredible. I love that story.
Yeah, I got 7 years ago.
Wow.
And we all looked at each other. Our hair, was sticking up because it was so immediate. I asked it, it came through. And that night we got Mary Todd.
I was going to say Mary Todd. Yeah.
Got Mary Todd. We there was so much cool stuff. I think the Bandoffs might have that up on their channel that you could actually watch.
Wow.
But the Columns Museum, I love that. I love when you know your history, again, reading, knowing what's happening in these places that we're going to. You know the right questions to ask, and you know how to ask an intelligent question and let spirit meet you halfway and give you the other half.
Right.
And that, to me, when you get that intelligence, where is that coming from?
Right. That's amazing. That's amazing. Wow. That's
in a simple ghost box, a sweeping ghost box. A lot of people are like, well, you could be getting a radio station, but if
they're legit. They work.
I hold up this mug, what am I holding up? Mug. What are the chances?
There was no bigger skeptic of the SB7 spirit box than me until I bought one. And now I got it. Now, the thing with the SB7, my kids don't like it. They like the Ovilus type because the word comes through. It's clear. They know what it's saying. And those things do work. We've had full-blown conversations with those things, intelligent conversations, but the SB7, you got to develop an ear for it. Gary Golka, who was known for developing the one that most people use, and now the SB7 Pro, he says he's the first one to say you have to keep using it, and eventually you could hear everything that comes through. He says, but you have to develop an ear for it. And my kids don't have that kind of patience. So
that's, I think, with a lot of what we're listening for. You develop it, you learn how things come through. You learn the layers. Sometimes things that come through really subtle. Sometimes come in really strong, and that could all be the energy that spirit is using to come through.
Correct. Yep. Rich, I'm gonna put your books up here again.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Paranormal Dharma. That must be your new one.
That is, yeah. Terrestrial Valley, all those were fun.
This is an unfair question.
Okay.
If somebody's going to look at your book, you got a lot of books. For me, it's kind of easy.
You can't pick your favorite book.
I know that's the question. You knew I was going to ask that. See, psychic, folks. See that? He's psychic. For me, it's easy because my books go chronologically. You start with the first one. That's it. And then you go to the second one. With you, they're different subject matters. So they could literally start anywhere, I would think, right?
Yeah. That's how I kind of wanted it. I kind of wanted you to be able just to take that deep dive. I mean, if there's one aspect, I will say the mediumship books, the Facing Spirit and Only a Thought Away, they're kind of their own because we talk about how to develop your mediumship.
Okay.
And how we all have the ability to harness. So those kind of can sit on a shelf all by themselves, but everything else is just a journey through the paranormal, whether it's spirit activity. I've written about Sasquatch. I've written about aliens. I wrote a whole book about the Hudson Valley and the Pine Bush area and the flap there that, happened in the 1980s, where people were seeing craft the size of stadiums above their homes, and mass people. I'm talking about 400 or 500 people seeing craft in the sky. And being able to interview like abductees, which I'm a kid of the 1980s. I grew up, I was born in 82. So I grew up with In Search Of and Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World and sightings. And I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this when I was a kid. And I remember I would handwrite little books about, I would take information from other books and some copyright infringement. And as a kid, I would have these little notebooks that I would write about, aliens and Roswell and the, all these different aspects. And I remember my, mom saved them all the way up until a few moves ago. I think they're gone now. But I wanted this and I manifested it so long ago. And when I look back at my journey, amazing.
It is amazing.
It did come full circle.
Right.
I tell anybody this, like I wasn't, a great kid in school. I didn't want to study. I was in special ed to one point because I didn't want to write. I always wanted to do what I wanted. I wanted to do this. I wanted to read books about aliens and Bigfoot and ghosts. And they wanted you to read The Great Gatsby.
Right. No, I completely, I get that.
And I remember many conversations with, your counselors. What do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a writer. And the sad thing is they never pushed that. They never said, well, you should take this, this, and this. They said, you need more realistic goals. And that to me set a fire under my, what, that I am constantly writing. I'm constantly trying to prove them wrong. I remember I started to devour books by Stephen King. You said I can't read? Well, here you go. I can tell you everything that happened in The Shining. And then, here's books by Whitley Strieber. Here's books by Bud Hopkins. I can tell you everything that happened in Intruders. That was my interest. And instead of using that to kind of like uplift a student, you kind of just dismissed it. So to this day, I think that's why I do as much as what I do. And my mind's always working. And I'm always writing because of that. It's just, I want to prove them wrong. So I'm still thinking about sending Lodi High School in Bergen County, New Jersey, a whole box of my books to put out.
There you go. And we're gonna call it Rich's Revenge.
Yeah. So if anything, if somebody's watching this and they're like, I can't write, you could write a book. You could write a book. Start with 1 page a day. At the end of a year, you'll have over 300 pages, even if you throw out some, and start. Because that's the hardest thing, is just putting the pen to paper, whether you're sitting at your computer, your phone with notes. Start, because once you start, you'll find it. You'll find that rhythm, and things just start coming. And tell your story. A lot of people think that too. Well, what can I add? Everybody can add something to the collective.
Perfect. Rich, we got like 7 minutes left.
Oh man, it went by fast.
My gosh, this went by like lightning. It's ridiculous.
And my kids were pretty good.
They were awesome. And I love the cameos. Are you kidding me? You got to do that the next time. Where are you going to be? Give us some upcoming events.
I'm always working with the Morris County Park Commission.
Okay.
You could go on their website. I have a lot of stuff linked just on my website itself, richardmoschella.com. You can find out everything that's happening there. In Inner Soul Wellness in Denville, New Jersey. In May, I'll be doing a mediumship event there with Kim Geyer. So I'm really looking forward to that, where I'll be doing spirit art for everyone in attendance. Everything's on the website. So richardmoschella.com. And you can also find all my books on Amazon. A few are also available at Barnes & Noble.
Perfect.
Noble has, I think, 3 of them.
And folks, you really need to read some of these books. I mean, you subscribe to this channel for a reason. So now you need to take advantage of the knowledge and the wisdom of Richard. He's got a lot of books. Pick one out. Pick a cover that piques your interest. I think I'm going to pick out. Let me see. We're gonna put that slide up again.
Okay.
Spirits and history. That's going to be my first one.
Okay.
And then, okay, I got to ask you about spirit voices. Tell me about spirit voices.
In Spirit Voices, it's really a book that talks about the communication process that I've started to go through as a medium. So that was one of the first books I started to write about how my spirit art started working and how I was going into places and seeing the imagery and how I started to combine that with the paranormal investigation and see
Right.
if we could get that evidence. If I drew a sketch of a man with a derby from the 1940s, are we communicating with a man with a derby from the 1940s, and we have the equipment that's giving us those answers? So that was kind of a book that really just aligned, and again talks a lot about location and the places that we were in. The Sussex Inn in Vernon, New Jersey is mentioned in that book. The Butler train station. So there's a lot of local things to northern New Jersey that you could even read in other states and still learn about how this information was being gathered, what tools that we were using, and the intriguing messages that were coming through from the other side. In there, I'm doing a spirit art sketch a year prior to another medium going in and doing a spirit art sketch. Never gave her any information. She comes in and draws the same boy that I did.
Mm-mm-mm.
That
Wow.
they're the
That's
same
incredible. That's
head.
incredible.
Yeah, and this little boy just loved the train station. He didn't die there, but it was a place that he enjoyed in life. And I just felt his energy. It was happy. It was playful. It was hiding under things and running around. And a year later, I tapped another medium who does spirit art, and she came in and drew the same boy and talked about the same things that I did. And that was a huge nudge for me to just start doing this more. Don't
Right.
don't be afraid to turn over a sketch. You know, at the time I didn't feel like my sketching was any good, and I was hiding a lot of this stuff just for myself to flush out. And once that happened, she's like, "You need to start doing this. You need to start showing people your sketches." So that story is also in that book, and the enfoldment process of opening up
Wow. That's incredible.
the.
Um,
So
yeah.
and it's very hard to pick one book, but
Oh, no. Before, when I was asking you to pick your favorite, I was just kidding, because I knew that was
oh,
gonna
I
be
said
one of
pick
those
one.
questions.
And I'm sure, like we talked about, there's times you want to go back to your first or your second book and be like, I would totally write that differently. And the option is always on the table. Would you want to do a revised edition? And then that
Oh,
up a whole can of worms.
let me just tell you, I did it. I did it. My first book, Family Spirits, and for those of you who don't know what it is, it's the picture of it is in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. I did a revised edition. I went through the entire book and corrected see, I hired a very expensive editor to do my first book. That was like not good. It was not money well spent. And there were so many errors.
Right.
And I went and I did a revised edition, but by doing the revised edition, things were reworded, and all of a sudden it didn't sound like me anymore.
Yeah.
So now when I read the revised edition, I tell people to buy the first one, because
You lose your voice.
yes, exactly. So I honestly believe the first edition is better,
Yeah.
even though there are some typos in it. So yeah, there are caveats to that. And and I just want to let everybody know, if it seems that my panel is getting darker, it's because when I started the show there was daylight coming through the window, and
It's
now it's
getting
getting
here too.
darker. So let there be light. There we go. Okay, now you can see me again. So I should have had that on from the beginning, but that's okay. In the beginning, you could see me, so whatever. But yeah, Rich, I got to tell you, we got 1 minute. Look at that. This has been wonderful.
It's been an honor to be on your show. You're one of the good ones, Bobby. So
Thank you.
thank you very much for having me on. And like I said, my kids, my wife's not here, so I was like, I hope this can happen without a puppet that's like coming up, like, hey, Bobby.
Yeah, that's okay. You look at, what, family comes first, and Lord knows the kids absolutely come first. So that would not have been a problem, because you can always reschedule. That's not a big deal. But I'm glad this worked out.
No, and we got to investigate. I want to investigate with you. I want you to come out to something that we're doing and to, get to work with you actually on an investigation.
Yeah, we need to do that, and maybe sometime in the future I can get you out here to do some of these Moravian ruins, because
Definitely.
you would love these too, because these vibes you get from these are absolutely incredible. But
Oh,
this was an amazing show.
everybody.
You are on your game, pal. You really are. So I really appreciate it, and I want everybody watching. And I can tell you right now that over the over the course of a few months, this is going to end up getting thousands of views, because all the shows do. Because there's people in our fan base that are from different time zones, so they're not always on right now. So I encourage everybody to buy Richard's books. They're readily available. You can get them on Amazon. You get them on some on Barnes and Noble. You can get them shipped no matter where you are in the world, and I encourage you to do so. This is an amazing man, folks, and I really think you should take advantage of his wisdom, and I'm sure you're going to really enjoy his books. Richard, I want to thank you again so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Bobby.
All right. You have a great night.
You too.